The first time Commander ROAN VEGA touched my throat, it wasn't desire. It was paperwork. The generator coughed like a dying animal, the lights flickering in sympathy. I adjusted my stance and leaned closer to the table, ignoring the way sweat slid down my spine beneath my jacket. My gloves were slick with blood, not mine, not yet, and the air smelled like antiseptic barely winning a war against rot and iron. "Stay still," I muttered, more to myself than to the man on the table. He groaned anyway. "Alpha, not one of mine, not anyone's." If tonight went the way the system preferred, his uniform, what was left of it, marked him as opposition. The kind you weren't supposed to patch up, the kind you were supposed to let bleed out quietly and call it strategy. My hands shook, not because I didn't know what I was doing, because the first did. I clamped down harder on the tremor, fingers steadying as muscle memory took over. Incision, pressure, clamp. My breathing fell into rhythm with the generator's uneven pulse. I'd been told, more times than I could count, that principles were a luxury, that underground medics didn't get to be picky, that one day my stubborn insistence on saving the wrong people would get me caught. I believed them. I just didn't care. The bullet had missed the artery by a whisper, close enough to kiss it, far enough to give me a chance. I focused on that, on the fragile line between death and survival, because it was easier than thinking about what would happen if the rumors were true. If the patrols really were sweeping this sector tonight. The man gasped as I stitched. I didn't apologize. Pain meant he was alive. The first sound wasn't boots, it was silence. The generator hiccuped, and then the hum of it was suddenly too loud, too alone. If this story caught you, subscribe. More are waiting. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears until you notice it. I straightened slowly. Of course, I said to no one in particular. Right on schedule, the door at the far end of the basement didn't explode. It opened. Cleanly. Precisely. Men flooded in, weapons raised, movements sharp and synchronized. Forces of rapid response. The kind that didn't miss. The kind that didn't negotiate. I lifted my hands, blood and all, palms out. Before anyone gets excited, I said, tone dry, he sedated, I'm busy, and if you shoot me, he dies. Which, I assume ruined someone's report. No one fired. Then he stepped in. Commander ROAN VEGA didn't look like a man walking into an illegal medpoint. He looked like a man who owned the concept of rooms. Tall, immaculate even in tactical gear. His presence seemed to push the air outward, reorganizing it around him. His gaze swept the space once. Table. Patient. Me. It landed like a verdict. Well, I said, because silence had never been my strength. This is awkward. He didn't react. Not with a flinch. Not with a sneer. His eyes were calm, assessing, the kind of calm that came from knowing exactly how many ways this could end, and being comfortable with all of them. Medic Seth Hale, he said. My name, clipped and precise. Omega. Unregistered. I gave him a thin smile. You make it sound so exclusive. Two soldiers moved closer. I didn't move. If this was an arrest, it was the politest one I'd ever seen. Instead, ROAN VEGA stepped closer himself. He stopped an arm's length away, close enough that I could see the faint scar along his jaw. Close enough that my bond receptors prickled, uneasy. Not with attraction, but with pressure. Like a storm building without rain. This operation, he said, requires your cooperation. Funny, I replied. Most people start with handcuffs. His gloved fingers rose. For a split second, I thought he was going to grab me. Slam me against the table. Prove every story I'd ever heard right. Instead, he touched my throat. 2 fingers, precise, impersonal, right where a claim mark would go. I froze. By order of command, ROAN VEGA said evenly. You are hereby assigned to a temporary claim for the duration of this mission. The words settled into the room like ash. Temporary claim, not arrest. Not execution. Worse. I laughed. Sharp and humorless. You're kidding. He didn't blink. This bond is non-negotiable, he continued. Refusal constitutes obstruction of an active operation. I stared at him, at the soldiers behind him, at the man bleeding on my table. Understanding slid into place, cold and clear. They weren't here to save me. They were here to use me. The briefing room smelled like disinfectant and money. White walls. Seamless table. No shadows. After the basement, it felt like stepping into a lie so clean it squeaked. I sat straight-backed in a chair that was definitely designed to make people feel smaller than they were. My hands folded neatly in front of me, because anything else would have been interpreted as resistance. Across the table, Commander ROAN VEGA stood, not sat, reviewing a projection that hovered between us. Lines of text scrolled past in disciplined blocks. Protocol language, my favorite. Temporary claim authorization, ROAN read. Voice steady. Duration, mission-bound. Scope, operational cover, biometric synchronization, and behavioral compliance. Behavioral compliance, I echoed. That's a fun phrase. He didn't look up. You'll find it clearly defined. I'm sure I will, I said. Right between ownership and acceptable deviations, I assume. That earned me a glance. Brief. Measuring. Then his eyes returned to the text. A third presence crackled to life as a hologram at the far end of the table. Marcus Hale, Alpha, coordinator, and living proof that clean hands could still do dirty work. Let's keep this efficient, Marcus said. This bond is a formality, necessary cover. Nothing more. Funny, I replied. Most formalities don't come with clauses about control thresholds. I scrolled the document with a flick of my finger, reading fast, catching every word that tried to hide behind legal precision. Ownership, temporary, control, situational, permissible deviation, at command discretion. I looked up. You make it sound like a rental agreement. What's the late fee? Silence. Then, unexpectedly, nothing happened. No reprimand. No tightening of the room. ROAN didn't smile, but he didn't shut me down either. He simply waited, as if giving me space to finish my little rebellion. That annoyed me more than anger would have. You will be under my authority, ROAN said finally. Operational decisions only. And if I decide an extra needs saving? I asked. Marcus's image sharpened. Then, you'll follow orders. I met the hologram's gaze. I've never been good at that. Which is why, Marcus said coolly. You'll be marked. There it was. ROAN moved around the table. His steps were quiet, intentional. He stopped in front of me, close enough that I could feel the change. In the air again, that pressure, like standing too near a storm front. This is procedural, he said. Nothing more. Lucky me, I muttered. He signaled to Iris Cole, who stood against the wall with a tablet in her hands, expression unreadable. She didn't intervene, didn't comment, just observed, like this was a variable she was filing away for later. ROAN's glove came off. The device he used wasn't ornate or intimate. It looked like medical equipment. Cold. Precise. He pressed it to my throat, right where skin was thinnest. I braced myself. The sensation wasn't heat. It wasn't desire. It was compression. An invisible band tightening, a weight settling into my chest. My breath hitched, not from arousal, but from the sudden awareness of being contained. Defined. Claimed. I clenched my jaw, refusing to give him anything else. No sound. No reaction worth noting. When it was done, the pressure eased, leaving behind a faint ache and a mark that felt more conceptual than physical. ROAN stepped back immediately. Bond established, Iris said quietly. I touched my throat once, then dropped my hand. Inside, something hardened. I looked at ROAN VEGA, at the clean room, at the flawless protocol that thought it could turn me into a tool. I will not be your resource, I promised myself. No matter what this mark says, the city at night wore its lies better than people did. Neon bled into rain-slick streets, reflections shattering under every passing vehicle. We moved through it like we belonged because on paper we did. Two names stitched together by forged documents, biometric overlays adjusted just enough to fool scanners. Seth Hale and ROAN VEGA. Bonded. The word sat wrong in my chest, even as I slipped my arm through his when a checkpoint loomed ahead. Relax, ROAN murmured. low enough that only I could hear. Your pulse is broadcasting. I'm a medic, I muttered back. I notice things. His fingers tightened, just slightly, against my sleeve. Not a command, a cue. That was the first thing I noticed. Outwardly, we were seamless. The kind of couple that didn't have to perform affection because it was already assumed. His presence shielded me from questions. My mark made his authority unquestionable. Doors opened. Eyes slid away. Inside, it was all tension and sharp edges. We reached the safe apartment just after midnight. Neutral territory. Clean. Too clean. I dropped my bag by the door and rolled my shoulders, trying to shake off the feeling of being watched even when we were alone. You don't flood the space, I said abruptly. Roan looked up from his comm unit. What? Your pheromones, I clarified. You control them. Most alphas don't bother. They rely on dominance, he replied. I rely on discipline. I snorted. Same thing in a nicer uniform. He didn't argue. The first night raid came fast. Iris's voice crackled in my ear, calm and clipped, feeding us coordinates. As we moved through back alleys and half-collapsed buildings, the mark at my throat pulsed faintly, not pulling me toward Roan, but anchoring me, like a reminder of where I was supposed to stand. We breached a low-level site without incident, too quiet. I didn't like quiet. That was when I heard the whimper. Hold, Roan ordered softly. I'd already turned. The civilian was wedged behind a stack of crates, bleeding from a shrapnel wound in his leg. Young, beta, terrified, not on any list Iris had given us. Not part of the op, I said, already kneeling. Seth, Roan warned. He's going to bleed out, I shot back. 2 minutes, maybe less. My hands moved automatically. Pressure, assessment, quick seal. The man sobbed into his sleeve as I worked. I felt it then, Roan's attention, sharp and focused but not oppressive. He didn't flare, didn't pull on the bond, didn't override me. He stood watch. 2 hostiles approaching, Iris said in my ear. You need to move. 30 seconds, I said. Maybe 20. Commander? Iris pressed. Roan didn't answer her immediately. I finished the seal, injected a stabilizer, and grabbed the civilian's arm. You run when I tell you, I whispered. Don't look back. He nodded frantically. Roan shifted, blocking the corridor with his body as the man limped past us and vanished into the dark. Then we were moving again, the operation resuming as if nothing had happened. Back in the safe apartment, the silence felt heavier. You violated protocol, Roan said finally. And you didn't stop me, I replied. A pause. That civilian was not your responsibility, he said. I met his gaze. Neither was I. Something unreadable crossed his face. He turned away, pulling off his jacket. As I lay awake later, staring at the ceiling, the realization settled in slow and uneasy. Commander ROAN VEGA had seen everything, and he had chosen not to see. The extraction zone was already burning when we arrived. Fire crawled up the sides of abandoned warehouses, smoke turning the air into something you had to chew through to breathe. Gunfire cracked sharp and close, echoing off metal and concrete. The city had shed its neon skin for something raw and ugly. Move, Roan ordered, voice steady even as chaos pressed in from all sides. I moved. Running under fire had a rhythm to it. Short bursts, sudden stops, the constant calculation of distance and timing. My mind narrowed, counting seconds the way I always did. 10 to cover. 5 to assess. 3 to decide if someone lived or died. A body went down 20 meters ahead of us. Not ours. I saw it anyway. Saw the way the man's leg folded wrong beneath him. The spray of blood dark against the pavement. Enemy insignia. Alpha. I swore under my breath and broke formation. Seth, Roan snapped. He's arterial. I shouted back, already sliding to my knees. The world reduced itself to hands and heat and noise. My gloves were slick again, my breath too loud in my ears. I pressed down hard, counting 1, 2, 3, until the bleeding slowed just enough. Shots rang out closer this time. Extraction in 60 seconds, Iris said, tension finally edging her voice. You need to pull back. Now. I didn't look up. He won't make it. The wounded alpha gasped, fingers clawing weakly at my sleeve. Fear stripped him of every rank and allegiance. I felt the shift before I saw it. Roan stepped in front of me. Not behind. Not beside. In front. His body took the line of fire. Weapon raised. Stance solid. Shots sparked off metal and concrete around us. One clipped his shoulder plate, sending a jolt through the bond sharp enough to make my vision blur. Work, he said curtly. So I did. Clamp. Seal. Inject. My hands moved faster, fueled by something dangerously close to gratitude. When the bleeding finally stopped, I dragged the alpha toward cover and shoved him toward a secondary exit. Go, I barked. If you stop, you die. He staggered away. Extraction now, Iris yelled. Roan grabbed my arm and hauled me up, pulling me into motion as the zone erupted behind us. We ran blind through smoke and fire, lungs burning, the bond between us a taut line that kept us from losing each other in the chaos. The transport doors slammed shut behind us. Silence fell hard and sudden, broken only by ragged breathing. I slid down against the wall, heart hammering, hands still stained red. Roan stood across from me, helmet off now, his expression carved from stone. You violated a direct order, he said. I looked up at him, chest still heaving. You noticed. You endangered the mission. You shielded me. A muscle jumped in his jaw. That was tactical, he said. Then, say it was a mistake, I shot back. Say you should have dragged me out by the collar. He didn't. The transport hummed around us, carrying us away from the fire. Iris's voice cut in briefly. Status reports, confirmations, but neither of us answered. Finally, Roan spoke again. You don't get to decide who lives. I pushed myself to my feet, anger cutting through the adrenaline. And yet I keep doing it. You can't save everyone. I didn't ask to, I said. Just the ones in front of me. He held my gaze, something fractured flickering beneath the calm surface. You're not expendable, he said quietly. I laughed once, sharp. Then why does every protocol treat me like I am? Silence stretched between us. You should have stopped me, I said finally. His eyes darkened. I know. That was it. That was the crack. Not a confession. Not an apology. But the first time Commander ROAN VEGA admitted that his perfect code had failed him. The safe apartment was quiet, in the way only places between disasters ever were. No sirens, no gunfire, just the low hum of climate control and the distant city breathing through sealed windows. I sat on the edge of the narrow bed, boots still on, staring at my hands as if they might explain themselves. They'd stopped shaking. That bothered me more than the blood. Roan stood near the window, his jacket draped over a chair, sleeves rolled back. The mark on my throat felt dull now, present but not insistent. Not pulling me toward him, not demanding anything. So, I said, because silence had already had its turn. This is the part where I'm supposed to feel something, right? He glanced over. Define something. The magic, I replied lightly. The overwhelming pull. The sudden realization that my life makes sense because an alpha exists in the same room. He considered that expression unreadable. And do you? I shook my head. No fireworks, no euphoria. No choir of instincts singing your name. A pause. That's expected, Roan said. I blinked. It is. This bond isn't designed for intimacy, he explained. It's a tool. Coordination, cover, control. Ah, I said. Romantic. One corner of his mouth twitched. Not a smile. Close enough to count. I leaned back on my hands, staring up at the ceiling. Good to know it's not just me then. I was starting to think I was defective. You're not. The certainty in his voice made me look at him again. I scoffed. You say that like you've run diagnostics. I've reviewed your file, he said. Extensively. Lucky me. The quiet settled again, different this time. Less sharp. More open. I don't like being claimed, I said suddenly. Roan didn't interrupt. I don't like being reduced to a variable in someone else's operation, I continued. I don't like that Mark telling people who I belong to. You don't belong to me, he said. I laughed softly. You might want to tell the scanners that. He stepped away from the window, sitting across from me, posture relaxed but attentive, not looming, not commanding. The bond doesn't take your agency, he said, unless someone abuses it. And you don't? I asked. He met my gaze steadily. No. The answer was simple, unadorned. It unsettled me more than any grand declaration could have. So, what does it do then? I asked. Roan exhaled slowly. It changes perspective. I frowned. That's vague. It's meant to align priorities, he clarified. Reduce friction. Make coordination instinctive. I considered that. Considered the way he'd stepped in front of me earlier. The way he'd waited. Watched. Chosen. I don't feel owned, I said quietly. I feel noticed. Something shifted between us. Not heat. Not hunger. Understanding. I huffed a laugh. Don't get excited. I'm still not accepting this as anything more than a technical inconvenience. I wouldn't expect you to, Roan replied. For the first time since this had started, we weren't speaking as Alpha and Omega, not as commander and asset. Just two people sitting in the aftermath of bad choices and worse orders. As I lay back later, the Mark warm but unobtrusive, I realized something else. The bond hadn't changed my body. It had changed the way I saw him, and that was somehow far more dangerous. The residential sector looked like a mistake no one wanted to admit to. Rows of half-lit apartments leaned into each other, balconies sagging under years of neglect. Windows were dark or shattered. The air smelled like dust, old smoke, and something faintly chemical that made my nose sting. Clear and move, Roan said over the comm. No delays. I followed, steps light, senses tuned too sharply for comfort. This wasn't a combat zone, not officially, which meant civilians were statistically irrelevant. That was when I heard the cough. It was weak, wet, human. Hold, I said, already turning toward the sound. Seth, Roan warned. We're not stopping. I found him slumped against a stairwell wall, one hand pressed to his side, blood seeping between his fingers. Young, civilian, no visible weapon, no tactical gear. His eyes went wide when he saw me. Please, he whispered. I didn't know where else to go. I dropped to my knees, scanning him quickly. Shrapnel wound. Infection, already setting in. Not immediately fatal, but only if treated. Name? I asked. Noah. The bond thrummed faintly, not pulling me toward Roan, but grounding me where I was. Like it knew what I was about to do and wasn't going to let me pretend otherwise. Seth, Roan said again, closer now. We don't have clearance for evac. I looked up at him. He'll die if we leave him. That doesn't change the protocol. I don't care. I tore open my kit, hands moving fast. Noah hissed as I cleaned the wound. We're under time pressure, Iris said in my ear, tension creeping in. Command wants confirmation you're moving on. Command. The word tasted bitter. Marcus Hale's voice cut in moments later, smooth and sharp as broken glass. What's the delay, Commander? Roan straightened slightly. We encountered a civilian casualty. Non-essential, Marcus replied without hesitation. You are to disengage immediately. I pressed harder on the wound, jaw clenched. He's not non-essential. He's bleeding. Medic, Marcus said coolly. You are not authorized to make that call. I looked at Roan. You are... For a moment, he said nothing. His expression was controlled, but I could see it now, the fracture beneath the surface, the calculation fighting something else. Seth, he said, voice low. We're leaving... No, I said. Flat. Final. The word echoed louder than the gunfire in the distance. This isn't negotiable, Roan replied. It is to me, Noah whimpered as another spasm hit him. I adjusted my grip, steady despite the adrenaline roaring in my veins. You can drag me out, I told Roan. You can pull rank. But I'm not moving until he's stable. Marcus's voice sharpened. Commander, this is insubordination. I'm aware, Roan said. Silence, stretched. I met his gaze, fully expecting the bond to tighten. For pressure, for control. It didn't. Instead, Roan's jaw tightened. His shoulders squared, and something in his eyes, something rigid and practiced, cracked. 5 minutes, he said abruptly. Marcus's voice snapped back. That's not. I said 5 minutes, Roan repeated, louder now. I take responsibility. The calm went dead. My breath left me in a rush I hadn't realized I was holding. I worked fast, faster than I should have been able to. Noah's breathing steadied, color creeping back into his face. You're going to live, I told him. But you're going to listen to me when I say run. He nodded, tears streaking down his cheeks. When I finally stood, Roan was still there, watching the perimeter. Protecting us. You just crossed a line, I said quietly. Yes, he replied. I studied his face, the tension carved into every line. Why? He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was different. Lower. Strained. Because, he said, following the protocol would have been easier, and for the first time I realized the perfect commander wasn't afraid of breaking rules. He was afraid of what it meant when he didn't. Everything went wrong at once. The second assault wasn't supposed to happen this way. The route Iris fed us collapsed under new hostiles, the extraction corridor swallowed by fire and falling debris. Sirens wailed somewhere above us, layered over gunfire and the deep, shuddering boom of structural failure. Change of plan, Iris said. Too fast. We've lost the primary exit. Secondary route is unstable. I felt the bond tighten. Not a command, not pain, just awareness. Roan registering every variable at once. Calculating. Noah stumbled. I caught him before he hit the ground. Blood soaked through the makeshift bandage, dark and warm against my palms. No, I muttered. No. No. He was paler now, breathing shallow. The stabilizer had bought us time, not safety. I can't keep moving, Noah whispered. I'm sorry. You're not, I said automatically, even as my mind raced through options that kept collapsing into nothing. You're not doing anything wrong. Seth, Roan said sharply. We need to move. Now, I looked at him. Really looked. Smoke streaked his face. His armor was scuffed, cracked at the shoulder where a shot had hit earlier. He looked less like a symbol now, more like a man standing at the edge of something irreversible. He won't make it, I said. Not like this. We don't have the resources to stop, Roan replied. Extraction is 2 minutes out. Noah has maybe one. The bond hummed, tight as a wire drawn too far. Shots rang out closer. Someone screamed. The world narrowed again, counting seconds whether I wanted it to or not. I lowered Noah carefully against a broken wall and dropped to my knees. I'm staying, Seth, Roan said, and this time my name carried weight. That's an order. I didn't answer. I was already working, hands steady, mind ruthless. Clamp, pressure, anything to slow the bleed. Iris's voice broke in, sharp with urgency. Commander, evac window is closing. If you don't move now, you lose the team. Roan swore under his breath. Seth, he said again. Look at me. I did. For once, he said quietly. Do what I say. I shook my head. I can't. The admission landed harder than defiance ever could. Noah coughed, blood flecking his lips. I wiped it away with my sleeve. Please, Noah whispered. Don't leave. The bond surged, not pulling me, not restraining me, but echoing the impossible choice hanging between us. Roan turned away, opening a channel on his comm. Command, he said, voice clipped. Abort evacuation. Silence. Then Marcus Hale's voice snapped back, sharp and incredulous. Repeat that. I am canceling extraction, Roan said. We're holding position. That's a direct violation. I take full responsibility, Roan cut in. Log it. The system responded immediately. A cold chime. A red alert flashing across my peripheral display. Protocol breach recorded. Command authority under review. I felt it like a fracture through the bond. Not pain. Consequence. "Roan," I breathed. He met my eyes, something fierce and steady there. "Do what you need to do." So I did. Time blurred. I worked like the world depended on it, because for one person, it did. I didn't think about the shots getting closer, or the structure groaning overhead. I didn't think about what this would cost him. I thought about blood flow, about pressure, about keeping Noah alive long enough for the impossible to become barely achievable. When Iris finally shouted, "Secondary evac route is clear. 30 seconds." I barely heard her. I dragged Noah to his feet, half carrying him as we ran. Roan covered us, every movement precise, deadly, protective in a way that no protocol could justify. The transport doors slammed shut with seconds to spare. Inside, the air felt wrong. Heavy. Charged. Noah collapsed onto a seat, breathing but alive. The mission status flashed green. Objective complete. I looked at Roan. The perfect formation was gone. The clean lines of command shattered beyond repair. We'd succeeded. And somewhere in the system, a code had just been broken that would never quite fit back together again. The medblock morning was too bright. White light flooded every surface, bouncing off polished floors and sterile walls until it felt invasive. Machines hummed softly around us, their rhythms steady and indifferent. Noah slept 2 beds down, hooked to monitors that blinked green and reassuring. Alive. That should have been enough. A soft chime sounded above my head. System notice, temporary claim status pending confirmation. Action required. I closed my eyes for a second, then opened them again, hoping the words might rearrange themselves into something less final. They didn't. Roan stood at the foot of my bed, arms crossed, uniform pristine again despite the shadows under his eyes. He looked composed, prepared. "Command wants closure," he said evenly. "The bond needs to be finalized or dissolved." "Finalized," I echoed. "That's one way to put it. It's procedural," he replied. "After a breach of this magnitude, they'll insist on clear lines of responsibility." "Responsibility," I said softly. "For what? Choosing wrong?" His jaw tightened. "For choosing—" The system pulsed again, projecting options into the air between us. Confirm claim. Transfer authority. Mark stabilization. My throat felt tight, not from the bond, but from the weight of what they were asking. What they were assuming. Roan stepped closer. "I'm prepared to accept it," he said. The fallout. The mark. There it was. His answer. Clean. Decisive. I sat up slowly, meeting his gaze. "And if you accept it because they told you to?" He didn't answer immediately. "This whole thing started as an order," I continued. "A workaround. A cover story. It became more than that," Roan said. "Yes," I agreed. "It did." I swung my legs over the side of the bed, standing despite the ache in my body. The bond hummed faintly, aware of the tension but not pushing either of us toward resolution. "I won't do this if it's still a command," I said. Roan frowned. "Seth." "I mean it," I cut in, voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "I won't accept a mark because it's convenient, or because it cleans up your report." He held my gaze, something uncertain flickering there for the first time since I'd met him. "I won't be claimed by procedure," I said quietly. "Not again." The room seemed to hold its breath. The system chimed again, insistent. Roan opened his mouth, then closed it. For a moment, he had no answer, no protocol, no prepared response, just silence stretching between us, heavy and charged, the perfect commander stripped of his code. Finally, he looked away. The system notice dimmed, unresolved. And in that tense, echoing quiet, I realized I'd just refused the one thing that would have made everything easier. For both of us. I knew it was him before the door sensor chimed. The bond didn't flare. It didn't pull. It didn't warn me. It simply noticed. That alone told me this was different. I opened the door and froze. ROAN VEGA stood in the hallway wearing civilian clothes, dark sweater, worn boots, no insignia, no visible comms, no armor, no uniform to hide behind. He looked quieter, not weaker, just unguarded in a way that made my chest tighten. "I'm off duty," he said, as if that explained everything. I stepped aside. That's new. He entered the apartment like a guest, not a commander claiming space. He waited until the door closed behind him before speaking again. I didn't come under orders, he said. There's no record of this visit. I crossed my arms, leaning against the counter. Then why are you here? Roan didn't answer immediately. He looked around the room, the bare furniture, the medical kit still half unpacked, the signs of someone who never expected to stay anywhere long. I broke my code, he said finally. The words landed heavier than any confession I'd imagined. I've lived by it for years, he continued. Rules, distance, clean decisions. His hands curled at his sides, then relaxed. I told myself it was discipline, but it was avoidance. I stayed silent. Let him have the space. I canceled extraction knowing exactly what it would cost, Roan said. Not because I had to, because I chose to. The bond stirred, not demanding, not pressing, listening. I didn't do it for the mission, he added. And I didn't do it because you're an Omega. My pulse ticked faster. Then why? Because leaving would have been wrong, he said. And because I didn't want to be the man who did it. I swallowed. He stepped closer, stopping well short of my space. Careful, intentional. I won't ask you to accept a claim, Roan said. Not as a solution, not as cover, not as obligation. My breath caught despite myself. I'm asking, he went on. You would choose it? The difference hit me like a shift in gravity. No system prompt, no authority overlay, no pressure sliding down my spine. Just a man standing in front of me, stripped of rank, waiting. I reached up slowly, touching the mark at my throat. It was warm, responsive, but quiet. This feels different, I said. Yes, Roan replied. It should. I studied his face, really studied it this time. The tension, the restraint, the way he was holding himself still, as if even the bond didn't give him permission to move without my consent. You're not claiming me, I said. No, he agreed. I'm offering to stand with you. The bond hummed softly, not sealing anything yet. Asking. I stepped forward, not because something pulled me, not because instinct demanded it, because I wanted to. When I placed my hand over his heart, the sensation was nothing like before. No compression, no weight, just alignment. The bond settled quietly, like a choice made and honored. Roan exhaled, the sound unsteady but real. That's it? I murmured. No fireworks? A faint, almost smile touched his lips. I was told those come later. I laughed under my breath, resting my forehead briefly against his chest. For the first time since this had begun, the bond didn't define me. It simply reflected us, and that, somehow, felt like freedom. The system didn't explode. It pressed. Interrogation rooms blurred together. Glass walls, neutral lighting, the same carefully calm faces asking the same questions in different orders. I answered when I had to, deflected when I could. Let Roan take the lead when silence was safer than honesty. They called it a review. I called it a warning. Everywhere we went, tension followed like static. In offices where policy lived and breathed. In corridors where people stopped talking when Roan passed. His authority was still intact, but thinner now, stretched over cracks that everyone pretended not to see. I packed my bag anyway. Habit, instinct, the quiet knowledge that systems didn't forgive people like me for very long. You're leaving, Roan said that evening, standing in the doorway of the apartment. I didn't look up. I'm prepared. Prepared for what? For this to end the way it always does, I replied, folding a clean shirt with unnecessary precision. They'll scapegoat someone. It won't be you. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. You don't have to go. I finally met his gaze. I don't belong in their structure. No, he agreed. You don't. The bond between us was steady now. Not tugging. Not warning. Just there. Like a line of trust, neither of us had to keep checking. I won't run, Roan said, and I won't let them erase what you do. I raised an eyebrow. That's ambitious. I've been thinking, he continued. About what broke and what didn't. I waited. There's a gap, he said, between protocol and reality, between who the system protects and who it discards. The extras, I said quietly. Yes, he took a breath. I can't dismantle everything. Not from where I stand. But, I prompted. But I can redirect resources, Roan said. Authorize independent medical units. Legal ones. Staffed by people who don't look away. My hands stilled. You'd make underground medicine unnecessary, I said. I'd make it visible, he corrected. Accountable. Protected. I laughed once, sharp with disbelief. You'd lose support. I already am. I searched his face for hesitation, found none. You don't have to stay, Roan added. Not for me. Not for this. I looked at my half-packed bag. At the door, I'd always assumed I'd walk through eventually. Then back at him. I'm not staying because you asked, I said. I'm staying because this works. A pause. And because, I admitted, I'm tired of saving people in the dark. He nodded. Then we build something better. Outside, the city hummed on, unaware of the quiet recalibration happening inside its walls. We weren't running. We were rewriting the margins. The clinic smelled like antiseptic and coffee. Real coffee. The kind that lingered in the air instead of burning off under emergency lighting. Sunlight poured through the wide front windows, catching dust motes and turning them into something almost hopeful. I liked mornings here. Hold still, I said, gently adjusting the bandage on an elderly woman's arm. If you tug at it again, I'm charging you double. She snorted. You doctors are all the same. I'm not a doctor, I replied. I just learned the hard way. She laughed, and the sound followed her out the door a minute later, lighter than when she'd come in. I washed my hands and leaned back against the counter, watching the waiting room fill slowly. Civilians, workers, a few faces I recognized from places I'd sworn never to return to. No one hid here. No one whispered. Across the room, Roan stood by the window, sleeves rolled up, talking quietly with Iris. He no longer wore command insignia. No polished armor. Just a jacket he'd clearly owned long before this version of his life. He caught me looking and raised an eyebrow. What? He asked. You're blocking the light, I said. Very unheroic of you. Iris smirked and stepped away, leaving him to cross the room toward me. You're smiling, he observed. Am the first? I said. Must be a side effect of legal practice. He leaned closer, voice low. You enjoy correcting people. It's one of my few remaining vices. Roan laughed quietly, actually laughed. The sound still surprised me sometimes. So did the faint scar on his shoulder, the one he never bothered to hide. Proof that he wasn't untouchable anymore. Neither of us was. The bond between us was calm. Not loud, not possessive, just present. A choice renewed every morning without ceremony or demand. You know, I said, watching a child press his face to the window outside. This isn't how I imagined things ending. Roan followed my gaze. No? I thought there'd be a chase, I admitted. Or a dramatic exile. Maybe a bitter report filed somewhere. And instead? He asked. I gestured around us. Paperwork, patience, coffee. He smiled. Revolution often looks boring once it works. I considered that, then nodded. I can live with boring. The clinic door opened again. Another life stepped inside. Another chance to choose right over easy. Once, I'd been ordered into a bond designed to erase me. Once, I'd been told who I belonged to. But that wasn't how this story ended. I was ordered to be claimed. I chose who I belonged to.